Hello, sisters. I literally moved the camera so that Momo would be more in the thing, and then she moved again. She was there, and then she moved. Okay. So honestly, I'm pretty tired. My tongue and mouth feel funny because I think I've been talking like for many hours the last couple days. But I do want to talk about this at least briefly, even if it's like 10 minutes. Um, First of all, I cracked the spine of this book, and I was like, oh no. But it's like an old book. I don't know what you're supposed to do about that, really. Um, I think this is my favorite essay so far in the book. Not I think. This is for sure my favorite essay so far in the book. Um, it read to me like this woman is like very woman identified. Like she's very like female centered and has like a feminist understanding of things. And it also was not very like wishy-washy. It was very like these are our experiences. This is why we're capable of this, and this is why we need this. I don't know. It was just like much more concrete than the rest of the essays in the book. Okay, so before we get going, let's look up some stuff about Buffy Dunker. I know I've heard the name before. I googled Buffy Dunker, and like the fifth link is the video I just made like a second ago. Okay. So, she doesn't have any publications listed on Goodreads. She doesn't have a Wikipedia page. There's some articles that are like interviews with her, but obviously that's not going to read that right now. So I'm just going to read you the little blurb in the back of this book about Buffy Dunker. Okay. Buffy Dunker, BA, taught at the Woodstock County School for 23 years and trained at the Greenhouse Therapy Collective as a feminist therapist. She currently has a private therapy practice and has been the subject of numerous television shows and films about her espousal of a lesbian identity at the age of 72, and has published book reviews in Sojourner and Gay Community News. Cool. Okay. So, I don't know. What do you guys think of the essay? I love how Maple immediately had all the owls. Like, you know what owl is? Um, is that a seal? Interesting. Okay. So, I'm not going to go through this like point by point. I'm just going to give some vague, broad thoughts. So, I have met lesbians who came out later in life. And what she describes here to me is yes, Matt Adams says I liked it. It made me think of a lot of things I hadn't really considered. Yeah, exactly. I found it like very productive. Um and it's exactly like she says. She's like we literally were taught, like, this is what women do, you get married. And so to avoid, like, dating around and, like, all kinds of stuff, like, the moment they got out of high school, they were like, "Let's get married and get this shit over with." Um, yes, like, living arrangements for older lesbians who have lost their partners. I know that there's, like, lesbian-specific retirement communities. I'm pretty sure there's a few in New England, but there's definitely a bunch in Florida. But, obviously, there's, like, a cost, like, this is a class issue then, right? Um And I know when there was, like, women's communes and feminist communes and stuff, well, there are still, but they're much less, right? That when there was more of those, um, they specifically, like, planned, like, "You're aging, you're gonna stay here, and we're gonna take care of you." But, like, those have all dried up. Yeah, anyway. So, yeah, her description of, like, "Well, we thought we had to get married, so we just, like, bit the bullet and did it, and then we were, like, stuck like that until our kids grew up." Um, that's, like, accurate to what I know, and also when she talks about, like, not only now do you have to come out to your parents, you have to come out to, like, your kids. If you come like, I met this one older lesbian who didn't come out until all her kids were in college. She literally, like, realized she was a lesbian, like, 2 years into her marriage, and she waited until her youngest kid was 18. Oh, hey, Corner. She waited until her youngest kid was 18 and in college to, like, divorce her husband and come out. And, it's just, like, a more practical perspective on coming out. And like even she is I love how realistic and practical this essay is. Cuz she is like, sometimes coming out isn't safe and it's not good. So like don't do that. Yep. Mm. I also I there was I don't know, I found it a great essay. I love how she talked about how lesbians have had to learn to be independent women in a world that is not designed for women to be independent from the beginning if they didn't want to be married or once they left their marriages, right? So how they have like a self-sufficiency and like like resilience to do that kind of thing that straight women who were married for many many years and are going to stay with their husbands till they die, they don't have this resiliency and like practical experience. um Cass says I appreciate her touching on the struggles of women of color, especially the lesbians of color have. Yes, I also liked that. Because it didn't sound like she was trying to say like, yeah, it's all the same. Like that's just good, obviously. Um, she mentions Kraft Ebing, Freud, and Havelock Ellis, these fucking piece of shit psychologists who are like, yeah, like if a woman wants to have sex with other women, it's because her sexuality is like backwards and she's like a pervert and needs to be like reschooled and like how to have all this fucking disturbing shit. Like, maybe I'm confusing him with someone, but isn't Havelock Ellis the guy who wrote like the book in like the 1940s or whatever, 1950s about like male homosexuality? Um, basically like the first academic to be like, look, this is a thing, we know it's happening, this is how it's going down. And he also was like wildly lesbophobic. Um, I also appreciated that she mentioned the well of loneliness and how they all internalize this idea. Like I haven't read it yet, but it's on my bookshelf. That they all the women who read that, those of us who read Radcliffe Hall's The Well of Loneliness in the 30s were convinced that loving a woman meant taking on a man's role, and that would lead to misery and death. Um, yeah. She talked about how World War II gave women more independence, um, and gave rise to more lesbians coming out. Like she says it was very rare, but obviously it was more possible once they were not financially dependent on men, right? And it was like normalized in society for women to be independent when the men were away. Yeah, I've heard similar things about like women's independence and communism. Like I'm not like gonna go on a whole pro communist thing or anything, but just you talk to women who lived in communist countries and then the communism fell, and they were like, well, before it was like women are supposed to be able to do all the same stuff men can do, like when in the workplace at least. And like after it fell, a lot of them, well, I mean, it's obviously very socioeconomically complicated, but there was like a definite feeling of like now you need to go back and be in your place. Um, anyway, she talks about McCarthyism. Yeah, a lot of what was happening with McCarthyism was like, I mean, obviously had to do with like the Red Scare and everything, but a lot of what it had to do with actually was like hunting and outing homos, mostly men, but you know, it's like it's so shitty. All like throughout history, there's been all of these things that like were designed specifically to fuck over gay men. And so even though they rarely fucked over the women had to act at all times like they could be fucked over by them. It was like very messed up. Yeah, I totally agree with both of you, Kaz and Blood Moon. She talks a lot about like internal acceptance and like internal awareness and stuff. I also love how this is an essay about identity and they never fucking use the word identity once. Good. Yes, that's how it should be. Uh, because it should be based on like acts and like experience and not like a fucking stupid label. Um I also this was so it's so strange to read this, like considering the modern mentality. Listen to this. A recent study shows that it can be psychologically healthy to come out of the closet. The burden of secrecy, deceit, and hypocrisy is heavy. So this is like a recent study. This is not like a well-established thing that all of the gay community is saying that you need to come out to be happy. But she's like, "Oh, look, we're starting to know that that might be a case." This is very interesting to me to read like historically like at the time. So then she goes over like the reasons that women might not want to come out. Um Like, it seems to me like one of the reasons, especially if you're older, is like a breaking of trust. Because listen to the way she describes this. Especially the risk of exposing their deception to people who love them as they have always known them. So, like, what I imagine, like, this is, calling it hypocrisy to stay in the closet is pretty harsh. Yeah, I agree. Um, like, imagine you're, like, in your 60s and you've raised a bunch of kids and your kids are, like, in their 40s now, the 30s and 40s. I get what she's saying. I'm not, like, saying that nobody should come out when they have kids, obviously, but I get what she's saying, that it's like, people have seen you this way, not for, like, a few years or whatever, but, like, for your entire life, and so it's like a different kind of thing than if you come out, like, as a teenager or something, right? Um, "It behooves all of us to respect and support any woman's choice to stay where she is." Yeah. She has had to develop skills to protect her privacy. She has had to deal with feelings of inadequacy and a lot of anger and guilt. She can bear witness to the difficulty of living as one is not, and to the value of self-acceptance. She's pointing out like the resilience it takes to exist as a lesbian when you have to stay in the closet. Um, I think that's like a really important thing to talk about because you never hear about it. You always hear like, oh, you're like stunning and brave for coming out, and like obviously, you know, coming out generally is a good thing, but for it to only be put into that, it's like the kind of like Chimamanda and Ngozi Adichie, which talks about like the one narrative thing. It's like that. I think is not a productive thing for any community to have like one strict narrative of how things are supposed to go, and it like flattens out your appreciation for like the diversity of what's going on. Um okay, so then she talks about the skills that older lesbians have developed in order to survive. So first, we've had to support ourselves. Okay. Where does it say second here? For lesbians, prejudice and harassment are common. So we've had to develop a degree of solid, stubborn self-confidence and courage. We have had to be autonomous and in charge of our own lives. These skills are necessary for minority women more than for white middle-class women who have provided much of the energy of the women's movement. Yeah. She talks about the struggle to be a lesbian single mother. Um, she talks about how older women are generally very disrespected by society. And she mentions like I guess it's like the beginning of like the Zoomer movement or whatever. I don't even know what that's called. But there's like magazines and like radio shows and stuff like that for like people over 65 or something, and being like how to live your life and like be happy and like what to know about aging and stuff. She mentions like very briefly at the beginning of that. Also, she mentioned some point in the essay that the average age people are living to is 77, and like I'm like that's so young. That's so young. Like aren't people all living to be like 100 now? Or like 90s. Um so she talks about the disparities that she sees between conventionally a conventional married old woman and an autonomous old lesbian. Um, but then she concludes by saying she thinks that those disparities will change as society like evolves basically. That average age is men, not women. Oh, the 77 or the other one? She talks about like the physical aging of the body and how 77 is about men. Okay, interesting. Thank you, Tossstones. I appreciate it. Um, how when it comes to like sexuality, and I don't mean like orientation, I mean like sexual behavior and feelings. Um, men lose attraction to women as they become less pornified, like they can be less sexually objectified. Um, so as they age. And so this has an effect on the straight woman. But lesbians don't really have the same problem. But and throughout the essay, she kind of says, like, this is a problem now, but it'll get better in the future. I don't know if she says it specifically about that, but that actually, I feel like it's kind of gone the other way. Just because you hear about so many young lesbians, and I mean like non rad femme lesbians, the way they're having sex now is like very, very porn influenced. Like they're doing stuff that like I don't understand why women would do that with each other. Like it's like men oriented stuff. So like I feel like that will have an effect in the future. Like so much of the young queer people, like, and I mean like my age, like under 25 or under 30, so much of the young queer people, they've bought into this idea that like if you want to have power and not be the oppressed one, you need to just do what the men do. And so I feel like that is probably we'll probably observe that like as the population who have been indoctrinated in the last 10 years grow older. Maple says, I found her take on older lesbian sexuality refreshingly positive. Yes. Literally, when I read the title, I was like cautiously optimistic, but I also was like, is she gonna go on a whole thing about like lesbian bed death or something? Like, I wasn't sure. Um, I wish she would have gone more into like the lesbian age gap relationship thing. Because she mentions how like it's not an issue and it's fine, but I was like, I wish she had said more about it. Um, I also like how she talks about how it's like a symbiotic relationship between older lesbians and younger lesbians. Like the younger lesbians can like help kind of like take care of them and like make sure they're not lonely, and the older lesbians can like kind of take them under their wing and teach them stuff. Um it just, I don't know, she makes it sound so nice. uh she talks about couples being able to stay together when it comes to like nursing homes and hospitalization and stuff. Yeah, corner, this is my favorite essay so far in the book. um Kaz says, fortunately young feminists have been I've seen have been harshly criticizing kink and the things porn has done to society. Yeah, I've noticed that too, like in the last yearish, that like there's like stuff that's gone viral on whatever the woke apps are, like Tumblr and TikTok and stuff, Instagram, of just girls being like, you know what, you might call me a prude, but like fuck you, I'm not doing that kind of shit. Like I think a lot of, I think it's, I've heard similar things about the queer ideology, that there's now like in high schools you will have like all of the like woke queer kids who are in like the gay straight alliance because like that's what the institutions are supporting, right? And then you will have like a handful of the other gay kids who are not in the gay straight alliance and don't hang out with those people because they don't buy into all of the like hearts not parts and all that shit. So I think we're seeing a similar thing now where like, you know, domestic violence among teenagers is like skyrocketed in the last 10 years. um and even though girls are having their sex for the first time at older ages, what they're doing, what the boys want to do in bed is much more violent, and like they're all into like pain and like choking and slapping and shit. So I think that like I'm so happy because I didn't really think it would happen. I thought that women would keep like internalizing their trauma and the mainstream would just like keep going more and more and more in that direction. But I think that like a lot of girls, the younger girls, have reached a breaking point, especially when like it's different than like when I was a teenager. It's not like I knew a bunch of women in their 30s who were still like living according to the principles of queer ideology and sex positivism and porn culture and shit, right? I think it's different for like the under 20s now looking and being like, "Oh wow, these women have been involved in like sex positive, kink positive, blah 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 for like a decade and look where it's got them. Look what they're doing with their lives and how happy and whatever, you know?" I don't know. Um yeah. I know that lesbian bed death must come up at some point in this book, but because in the introduction they mentioned it. Anyway, she talks about legal protections, all that kind of stuff. Thank God. Well, I don't know. If you're in America, it's kind of a mess. I'm not going to comment on that. But thank God, in a lot of Western countries now, whether your will be respected, whether you get to go visit your partner in the hospital, whether you can be put in an old age home together, thank God these are not really concerns. Like reading this, I felt like a sense of relief that I was like grief and relief at the same time. Grief that I know all of there's many lesbians I'm sure throughout history who as they aged were the living situation was taken out of their control and they probably were lost contact with their partners. Grief over that, but relief over knowing that in huge parts of the world now that's not that's it's not a certainty that that's going to happen to you. Um okay. She even has a section on coming to terms with dying. which I don't know, just refreshing. I never read anything like this. Um, okay, I'm gonna reread the whole last paragraph just because I loved this essay so much. Looking back now from the 1980s, it's evident that society's attempts to suppress homosexuals, especially women, have been unremitting and now and then pretty successful. Our increasing numbers help make us more powerful, but we must be wary of overconfidence. I mean, clearly, no offense to the older lesbians, but I think that some definitely were overconfident because, like, it's like some lesbians took their eye off the ball, like in the mid '90s or something, and everything died. Anyway, um, we need to constantly be aware of the deep defensive basis of masculine fear and anger about lesbian independence. Men, naturally, don't want to lose control of those who could provide them with care, comfort, children, and sexual pleasures. Recent conservative and regressive measures are dangerous. All of us, old and young, must work for a world where men can take care of themselves and share the responsibility for bringing up children. And younger lesbians need all the knowledge and encouragement they can get from us survivors. I very, very much agree. The younger lesbians need the knowledge and encouragement of the older women. I also love how she calls them survivors. Like, it's about like this like self-reliance and resilience and strength. I don't know, just like a really positive read to me. Kind of like we've been through really tough shit and we made it, and you can make it too. Um, Not so much like everything is better now, so it's all fine. Um, which is like very refreshing. I want to know what these conservative regressive measures are. Like, this is 1980. Maple says, "I'm a person who survived stormy delivery." It's a quote from her. Very interesting. Kaz says, "Calling them survivors doesn't sugarcoat what happened to them." Yeah. And I guess, like, especially depending on how you look at it. I mean, I've talked to women who were like, "Yeah, when I was like 12, I realized I was a lesbian." But like because of like where I lived and the culture and all that kind of stuff, even though I knew I was a lesbian when I was a kid, the moment I graduated high school, I got married to a guy. Um, and so in that situation, you can really consider all the sex they've had with their husband corrective rape. So I think Survivor is quite accurate, and I think it's a good thing to acknowledge the struggles that are often ignored these days. Hey, Ghost. I found it really touching the section where she talks about I don't know, I can't find it now, but she talks about younger lesbians hanging out with the older lesbians and seeing like, what, it's possible to like to age and survive and be okay. Like you can be okay too cuz I'm okay. Like that's like the big feeling I felt when I went to MFR. I was like, "Oh, they're okay. So it's possible that I could be okay." That was like the big thing I felt. Okay. So, the last essay in the identity section is Invisibility, Fantasy, and Intimacy. Princess Charming is Not a Prince by Lee Zevi and Sally Caballero. I don't know. It sounds like a very interesting essay. Yeah. I was kind of glancing at it, but I like to have my fresh reactions while I'm reading on my YouTube, so I actually stopped. But yeah, it sounds really good. If I had the energy, I would read it today. But wait, before I end the stream, let's schedule things, guys. Okay. So tomorrow, I don't think I work tomorrow morning. So I might read the next essay tomorrow morning. Although I have to say, it's been pretty slow going with this book. I feel kind of bad. Yeah, okay, tomorrow I don't have work in the morning, so I'll probably schedule it tonight. I'll probably, the moment I end this, the Top Twins movie I recommend. Thank you, Toss Stones. I think I saw that and then I forgot about it. Thank you, Toss Stones. I'll check it out for sure. I appreciate it. Yeah, so after this I'm gonna schedule my streams for like the rest of the week and put out a schedule probably. Like on my, like, you know how I do like an actual like schedule, like this is all that's happening this week. Cause I think for you guys, like when you look at my YouTube channel, you can only see like the next 5 streams, right? But like last week I scheduled like 11 streams ahead of time, not 5, so you couldn't see all of them. So yeah, but tomorrow morning. Okay. So, thank you for tuning in as usual. I will see you guys tomorrow for the last essay in this section of the book and perhaps another essay after that. We'll see how much time we have. No, thank you, Mad Adam and Ghost and Maple and Tossstones and Kaz and Bad Adam and everyone for coming. Because, you know, if you weren't here, I would just be like doing nothing. Okay. Oh, also, guys, I think I want to make, like, I technically have a Discord, but I think I'm gonna kill it and start a new one because I like you guys. I would like to be able to like have conversations with you where I can hear your voices. So I think I'm gonna make a Discord and like make it like high security. So like I've left to like let you in and like add like the 15 or so of you who are like always in the live chats. Because I think like you guys are also kind of friends with each other, and if we could like talk with our mouths, that would be better, I think. Yeah. But, like, you know, I'm always doing, like, 10 billion things, so I'm trying not to, like, overextend myself, but I was thinking maybe I could do, like, a weekly thing where we, like, hang out on Discord or something, you know? Yeah. Anyway, I'll let you guys know, whatever happens. Okay. Okay, bye. Have a good night, guys, or a good day or whatever. Bye.